Hey folks, Mel the Terrain Tutor here again with a new sort of semi-irregular series. Now we're all about terrain on this channel, but we are a wargaming channel and we haven't really looked at the games as such. Now I'm not going to be playing them or anything like that, but this series is dedicated to looking at the various rules of popular rule sets, yeah, and you'll get to decide which rule sets I look at. And then taking those and applying those rules and what we know about those rules into the terrain we buy and into the terrain we make, so that the terrain we have for our games actually enhances our games. Okay? Now as I said, yeah, you'll be picking which rules we work on, so at the end of the video, yeah, I'll explain how that's done. Yeah, but for this rule set, we're going to be looking at my personal favourite, bolt action. Now, bolt action is what would be described as a World War II rule set, although it can sort of be stretched to sort of World War I, and it can be sort of pushed up to, you know, going up to the Cold War era. Okay, so it's got a broad set, and also there's Konflikt47, which is sort of like the alternative futuristic version of World War II if it had gone on. Now I've spoken to the guys over at Warlord and they've assured me that the way terrain is handled in Konflikt47 is pretty much exactly the same as it's handled in Warlord's bolt action, and so all this discussion will sort of apply to both rule systems, guys. So whether you're playing bolt action or whether you're playing the sort of add-on Konflikt47 version, yeah, it'll work. So it's often described as 1940k, yeah, written by the guys behind the original 40k, yeah, Rick Priestley, Alessio. I think Rick helped write this. I hope he did. Oopsie. Do your research, both. Okay, it's a 28mm real scale war game, so not the heroic 28mm. It can be played at 15mm simply by converting all the measurements from inches to centimeters. Yeah, it's typically paid out on a 6 foot by 4 foot table, and I really like it. You know, I've got my Chindits for it. I've played lots of games, and it really pulls me in. Now this is due to sort of a random sort of order dice mechanic, yeah, and a simple set of rules that are, the dynamics comes from modifiers, okay, and the morale system. So it's essentially 4 little simple rule systems, yeah, that all come together to make a really dynamic and really tactical game, yeah, but without huge amounts of books and tokens and rules and special rules. It works really well, and that's why, you know, I've pretty much fallen in love with it. It is my main game. Yeah, the main way it works is it works heavily on line of sight. Yeah, which means getting down to the model and looking. And terrain wise, that's very important because that means terrain counts, and it counts a lot. It's often described as having a cinematic feel, and it genuinely does. And lots of terrain, nice looking figures, but I also think it's sort of a pull over to the fact that most of us have been raised on World War II movies, and so we're used to seeing the scenes of the British charging the Germans, you know, the Japanese, the Americans, the Soviets. We're used to seeing those in movies and those epic scenes, and so we can relate a lot more. Okay, and that's essentially the game. Right, I think what we should do now is move on to the actual how the rules affect with the terrain. So, game terrain. Right guys, now we're getting down into the real sort of the real meat and bones of it. Yeah, game terrain and how the actual rules affect you, what terrain you need and what terrain you need to make and buy, etc. Okay, now I've got my notes, like I said, I am going to be looking down at these because there's quite a few. Yeah, and let's get stuck in, eh? Right, first off, it's a small force game, okay, so it sits in between the sort of skirmish games of Mordenheim, Frostgrave, Saga, and between the sort of larger games such as Kings of War and Hailseas and the rank battles. Okay, typically you're looking at maximum of sort of 12 units on a table. Unit size comprises from a single model up to small teams of 2 or 3. They can be individually based or on 40 or 60mm bases. You've got support weapons which can be sort of based on 40, 60mm. Yeah, after that you've got infantry squads, and they sort of run between sort of 5 and 10 man. Okay, all based on individual 1-inch bases, and then you've got things like vehicles and artillery pieces, yeah, which are, the vehicles don't tend to be based, but the artillery pieces are based as you want to base them, yeah. So typically it's a 2-inch by 3-inch baseboard for artillery pieces, but it's down to the actual individual person. Now what is important is coherency. Yeah, the rules have a 1-inch coherency between squad members, and this is important when it comes to making your terrain, because you need to plan out what units are going to be able to use that terrain. Remember, support teams, artillery pieces, they're all going to be wanting either to get into an elevated position or into cover. So it's important when you're designing your pieces and you're laying out your scatter pieces and you're deciding what you want, you actually make sure you get terrain that will fit these support teams actually in. So your models can interact with the table, yeah, rather than sitting behind a rock piece or a scatter piece. Okay, and it's incredibly important and placement. Something as simple as a small piece of clump foliage on the top of a hill can really prevent you putting down your artillery piece, yeah? So it's always important to bear in mind that, you know, when you're planning things out, draw around where you want models to be able to be, and make sure that the terrain allows them to be placed, and make sure that the terrain allows them to function properly, i.e., yeah, your woods aren't set up in such a way that, you know, guns can only be pointed sideways out of them, you know, fixed pieces. Little things that, you know, rocks, tree placement, bush placements, don't force units to split, because that will affect the game. Okay, on top of that, the other key element is line of sight. Line of sight is huge in this game, absolutely huge. Everything is about getting down and getting that cinematic feel, yeah, and so your terrain's got to work with that. And so that means, yeah, that you need to make sure that if you want people to be able to see through terrain, yeah, it needs to be less than 1 inch high, so you can see the top body of models and they can shoot over hedges and walls and barriers and things like that. Conversely, if you want to block line of sight, okay, what you need to do is make sure that your terrain is roughly just shy of 2 inches high, yeah, because that will cover the standard model height. Okay, now on top of that, not only is there line of sight, yeah, and remember with line of sight, it's not just about how tall your hedges are, it's about get variation in height on your battlefield. So hills are important. They only need to be 1 inch, 2 inch high. You don't need big hills to play ball action. Okay, and soft rolling hills, yeah, work really well. Remember that 3-in-1 ratio, yeah? 1 inch up for every 3 inches across. At that ratio, your models won't fall down, you know, when you're making terrain. So nice sloping hills work really well. Okay, and the elevation counts, because it will give you just enough to see over that sort of intermittent terrain. Yeah, the sort of 50-50 stuff, and you do get 50-50 stuff, you know, you can't make all your bushes 1 inch high, guys. Now, another key rule, just let me get a mouthful. Another key rule is hard and soft cover. Now these comes back to the modifiers to shooting, and whether you can hit people. It's easier to hit people in soft cover than it is to hit people in hard cover. And the differentiation is quite simple. Yeah, it's basically looked at as soft cover is anything green and soft and veggie. Yeah, and hard cover is pretty much anything solid. Walls, rocks. Pretty easy, isn't it? Yeah. Now, that works really well, and obviously with your obstacles and all that sort of stuff and your scatter pieces, you can incorporate, you know, either these are bushes, hedges, or this is a wall. But there's going to come times when you want to put a bit of variation in, and variation does matter, you know. You want bushes and rocks, etc. Okay, and it can be important to sort of differentiate what you can see through and what you can't see through cover-wise. Yeah, now this is sort of harking back to line of sight. Now let's say that you want some really big bushes, yeah, but you want to make sure they're actually line of sight blocking. But the way you make bushes is adding lots of bits of clumps, so there could be gaps. Yeah. Now the way to do this, there's two simple ways of handling this. Either you build your bushes with a solid substructure, yeah, so say carved foam, yeah, and then attach all your clumps and everything on top of those, and so you know physically you can't see through them, or you use a terrain indicator. Now a terrain indicator is something very simple, like a specific colour of flower. What you could do is say, make sure you have lots of different flowers scattered around your pieces, making them all beautiful. Yeah, but all the ones with, say, purple flowers are definitely soft cover. That way you and your opponent, when you look down at the table, you've got an easy, quick reference that's visual, that's simple, yeah, to always make sure you've got a definitive answer on what terrain is what. Yeah, especially when you've got a few rocks or a bit of a wall and some bushes. Yeah. Another way of doing it, third way, yeah, and this is specifically with barriers, you can increase the thickness. So for example, with obstacles such as walls, hedges, etc., yeah, they're typically long straight pieces. Yeah. What you can do is you can increase one side and make it a bump. Yeah, so you have a thickening of terrain there to make it line of sight blocking. Consider a large bush or a couple of small trees and a bit of what you call undergrowth, yeah, sticking out the side of a hedge or a wall. Now it's important when you do this that you only put the bump on one side of the hedge. You don't sort of have it go up, out and then back in, because you're still going to want a flat edge for you to sort of bump it up against walls, to bump it up against courtyards, etc., or to bump it up against fields, sort of like, you know, the old doormat fields and stuff like that. But essentially keep one side flat. So with regards to indicating terrain types and handling line of sight with obstacles and bushes and stuff like that, yeah, consider solid cores, consider terrain indicators like flowers or, you know, a certain colour of stone, yeah, or a certain colour of bush or type of bush. Yeah, and with regards to varying obstacles with adding areas where you don't want people to be able to fight through, I'll cover this in a minute, or see through, yeah, that sort of bilateral thickening, yeah, the bump on one side of the strip, yeah. Also, variation really makes this game, so, you know, a lot of long straight walls, they do look nice, but if you can get a bit of variation in there, it really adds to the cinematic. And trust me, yeah, I've got loads of photos that you could put a grayscale filter over and think you're looking at a movie, yeah, and that's what really makes bolt action pop. Okay, now we did say that area, that watch out line of sight, and it's very much what you can see counts. There are some caveats to this, yeah, and one of them seems to be some cavatory caveats, shall we call them. One of them seems to be woods. Now the simple fact is, yeah, for most gamers, simulating realistic woods just isn't doable. Yeah, we don't have enough trees, and if we did have enough trees, we wouldn't be able to put models in them, yeah, or we'd need a spare house to store them in, yeah. And so we tend to use suggestions. I didn't even have a drink then, did I? We tend to use suggestions, okay, so these trees here in this area represents a wood. And so on that basis, there's rules within within the rule set that basically allow you to say, right, any model touching a tree base is considered to be within the wood. And the reason this is important is that you can be within the wood, yeah, and gain cover from it, but you've got to be at the edge of the wood to be able to fire out of the wood without penalty. Okay, so we're dealing with an area terrain situation. Now there's a couple of ways you can handle this. First off, my preferred way is wood bases. Now they're simply large pieces that you put down, yeah, that either have all your trees built in, or they're designed to take freestanding movable trees, and they have a bit of scatter, and it makes it a little bit interesting, but it has a defined edge of where your wood is. Okay, the next way you can handle this is sort of a mixture between smaller bases, things like you get from foreground where you've got 2 or 3 trees on it, and then what you do is you incorporate smaller scatter pieces built on, say, 40mm or 1-inch bases. Why do we call them 40 and 1-inch base? What is it, 28mm normally for an inch? That's strange. I'll figure that one out. Curiosity. Yeah, but anyway, what you can do is you can have your area bases, and then where you get the sort of curves in where there's no trees, fill those areas with little small scatter pieces, and what you'll do is you'll create a general impression of where the area is, and you'll be able to create a wood outline. Yeah, one of the benefits of this is you allow scatter pieces and nice clear areas, yeah, for your models to be placed in between the sort of area terrain, so they're still counted in that wood, but you get to jazz up your actual woods. yeah, because you don't have to worry about placing models on them. So you get the benefits of models being in woods and being in cover and being able to shoot out, but you get the cinematic looks of all the scrub, the woods breaking up as they come to the edge, and the sort of denser woodland on the actual bases. Okay, so that's area terrain, and it's mainly woods it applies to, but there may be other situations it applies. If you get to any that situation of I need to represent but I don't have enough to represent, that's when it falls into an area terrain cavatory caveat. Yeah. Okay, right. Now, looking at the essential defined terrain areas in the game, yeah? The terrain runs mainly on open ground, which is nice clear ground, and the best way to think of open ground is if you can move a squad across it pretty much ranked up with no difficulty, not being forced apart, yeah, except perhaps the occasional rock or bush, yeah? That should be considered open ground. Yeah, and it has no effect on the game, you know. The opposite to that is impassable. Yeah, and this is designed as, you know, your lakes, your cliffs, your incredibly really broken up, rocky, scraggy hillsides, etc., your swampland. And the easiest way to represent this is actually using the terrain technique, yeah, of denied placement. Okay, if you've got, say, a hillside and you want good chunk of it to be impassable, simply place rocks down and bushes down so people can't place their models on them. Yeah, it's a terrain builder's technique that we use to stop people putting models on hillsides which are a little bit too steep and they may fall over. Okay, it's essentially gaming terrain, literally gaming terrain. Yeah, you sort of socially engineering it. It's a bit like putting flowers on terrain to stop people being so heavy-handed with it. Flowers indicate delicacy, people handle things with flowers a little bit more delicately. Okay, that's true, yeah. My D-Day board up at War Games, people will happily rest books and anything on the sea. They won't put anything on the headland, yeah, because there's flowers there. But anyway, you're getting off types. So, using the idea of creating areas now where you simply can't place models for your impassable terrain is the easiest way of doing it, yeah? Because that way, once much like the visual indicators with terrain, it's forcing the player, yeah, to actually play the terrain how it's meant to be. Yeah, so your swamps, make them nice and packed, have loads of reeds in them so you physically can't get a model in there. You know what I mean? Okay, the next one is rough ground. Okay, now rough ground is anything which is described as being difficult to get across. Okay, in it is the sort of middle ground between open ground and impassable. For this, yeah, game the terrain again. Simply use exactly the same principles as we've used for the impassable terrain, yeah, but use it with the idea that when you're planning out your terrain pieces, you're forcing the squad, yeah, into its maximum coherency. Yeah, so you're forcing the models to spread out. Yeah, so what you can do is you can turn around, you can put, you know, a scattering of rocks every so often, so models can't be ranked up. Yeah, but they can get through. Yeah, and this is simulating the idea of the terrain matching the rules and the rules matching the terrain. Yeah, it's natural on the table that if you're going through an area where you can place models, but you know you can't really get them together, it becomes a natural key. Yeah, that very much like green is soft cover, yeah, grey is hard cover. Yeah, it's an indicator. Yeah, so there's no arguments. Now it's not really so important with scatter pieces, yeah, but it's a good sort of technique to get into because over time, as you fall in love with the game and you build bigger tables and you end up building that huge modular super table because the kids have moved out and you've got a bedroom for a gaming room now, yeah, that technique works really well to incorporate little areas of rough ground on hillsides and in low valleys. Yeah, by just simply breaking up the terrain without needing specific boundaries to say this is rough terrain. Remember, rough terrain only affects movement. Yeah, so the fact that you physically affect model placement works perfectly. Okay, now after let's see, I've got to look down at my notes now. Yeah, after rough terrain, we're talking about obstacles. Now, obstacles are typically anything which you would not be able to run across. Yeah, and the rules support that. You can't run across obstacles. You can sort of jump over them and start running. You can run up to them. Yeah, but you can't sort of break into a stride, hit an obstacle and jump over it. Yeah, fingers crossed. Remember, I'm not a perfect bolt action player, guys. I might have that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Yeah. So your obstacles are your hedges, your walls, your fences, your barbed wire, your barricades, your sandbags, okay? And all of those, okay, are designed not only to impede movement, not stop it, impede movement, okay, but also they're designed to be fought over. Yeah, so you need to be able to get models close up either side of them, and this is important. And then the general width you want for your obstacles, yeah, is you don't want them to be any more than 1 inch wide, because that's roughly the sort of width that you need for one of your guys to get his rifle, his Lee Enfield, and get the bayonet over the top of it, yeah, before jumping over and putting a couple of rounds in to finish the job. Yeah, so with that in mind, yeah, make sure that things like walls, hedges, all of them, yeah, are no more than 1 inch wide. And also, remember when earlier we were talking about, yeah, thickening areas up, yeah, to sort of, you know, block line of sight and to mix it up and to get a bit of variation. Yeah, you've got to be careful about that, because if you build walls and you put lots of bushes on either side to make them look really pretty, yeah, what you can do is you can end up forcing your models to about 2 inches apart. Yeah, so it doesn't look right. You know, when you go for that cinematic look, it doesn't go well. Yeah, and this is especially important when you build large fixed pieces. Yeah, so let's say you build a house with a small courtyard. Yeah, a house and it's got 3 walls around it. If you then put loads of pretty scattered stuff around the inside and bushes on the outside to make it really beautiful, what you're actually doing is you're denying combat, because you're forcing the models too far apart. Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah, so always be aware that when you're building certain walls, you're going to want models to get up close either side of them, so factor that in. Yeah, so if you are going to do things like add a bit of clump foliage, or, you know, an old broken down cart or anything like that to either side, put them in the same place, okay? Or just keep them to one side with gaps in between, and that idea of the bilateral bumps. Okay, so one side can get all the way up and the other side can pretty much get its models in, but may have to like separate by 1 inch because of a bush. Yeah, but factor that in. Yeah, because the last thing you want to do is make a load of obstacles that just, when you look down and you're looking through, you know, you watch your howitzer barrel and, you know, you're lining up the target, it doesn't look right. Okay, so bear that in mind for obstacles. Now, on top of obstacles, we have roads. Now, roads are important, but they're not essential starting off. Most people start off with an infantry force. Roads only count for vehicles because vehicles can move twice as quick on them. Breathe. Yeah? But roads are typically 3 inches wide. 1/4 of an inch either side, yeah, for a little bit of greenery sort of stuff, a little tailing edges, the flat bits, yeah? About 1 inch in the middle, and then 1/2 inch strip in the middle where you have your little grass tufts, because they weren't tarmacked. A lot of them were simple dirt roads, you know, so the middles would be worn down, and, you know, the sort of tracks would be worn down, and you get that growth in between where, you know, you're not getting the sort of impact of the cart wheels and, you know, the tank tracks, okay? And that middle bit's typically about 1/2 inch. So 1/2 inch, inch either side, 1/4 inch after that, 3 inch roads. It's pretty as narrow as you really want to get it. You could probably nip it a little bit narrower, because bolt action vehicles are true scale, and it's really surprising how small they are, especially when you see Jeeps. Jeeps are tiny. Yeah, as an old 40k player, coming from a Rhino to a Jeep is a big leap. It really is. I should get a picture and put them next to each other. Yeah, can you imagine going from a Land Raider to a Rhino? It took a bit of adjustment. Yeah, we used to take the mick out of John's little Jeep, something rotten. Yeah, but that's roads. Simulating roads. Yeah, starting off, it can be as simple as a grey piece of cardboard. You can use light grey scatter, grit, before you get up to making your own roads and, you know, buying set pieces, etc. yeah. But roads are a specific element, and the moment you get armour in, they do become a key one. And not just that, they're sites of ambush sites. You know, every sort of table I've played on where we've had roads, they've been integral into the game and played into the narrative of the game. So, you know, they are key. Rules wise, pretty simple. Now the only other sort of defined area, yeah, is buildings. Now, ruins are treated essentially along the lines of impassable, rough, open, you know, hard, soft cover, depending on what you can see, etc. Yeah, but intact buildings are handled as their own sort of classification. First off, yeah, it's down to the players to decide how they want to handle them, because some buildings can be solid, some buildings can be hollow, some buildings can have models placed inside. Rules mechanics wise, yeah, it's worked quite simply. Yeah, the rules assume that you can get one squad in a building, yeah, and a building is typically 6x6, maximum 8x8, okay, for a squad, yeah. Bolt action buildings tend to be quite small, yeah, compared to other rule systems, because other fantasy rule systems and stuff like that, because it's real scale, yeah, and in real scale, much like, you know, the little jeeps, you know, the buildings are a lot smaller. Yeah, typically the smallest sort of house is around about 3x4 as a footprint. Now, the rules specify that, you know, each sort of building, individual building, can take a squad of up to 10, yeah, on each floor. Okay, so when you're looking at buildings, you need to be able to get, if you want models to be inside, okay, you need to be able to fit a squad of 10 in. Okay, it's perfectly fine to scale buildings smaller, yeah, and to once gain terrain again, yeah, and have the terrain force it. So, well, actually this is only a small shack, you could perhaps get a support team in here, you could perhaps get a 5-man squad, or, you know, an observer or an officer, but you're not going to get a full squad. Yeah, and that's perfectly fine as well, yeah, but I would make it so that there's no, you could definitely only get that many in. Okay, sort of game the terrain and make the game force it, or once again use a terrain indicator. You know, the buildings with the barrels outside can only take 5 men or support squads, individual bases. Yeah, anything with logs stacked up against them can take, 10-man squads, and it's 10 man per floor. On fire openings, yeah, it's assumed that, you know, 2 men can fire out of each window, or a support unit, yeah, a 2-man support squad or 3-man support squad could shoot out of one window as a fixed position. Yeah, and you can imagine that, one at either side of the window, you know, taking pot shots, sort of, you know, angled off at a perpendicular. So when it comes to opening, windows count, doors count. Floor heights typically tend to be just about 2 inches, yeah, but obviously it may vary depending on, you know, where the buildings are and the theme, and, you know, because a lot of European buildings were a lot taller, you know, a lot of them were little hovels, simple as that. Yeah, so it comes down to your reference. We'll cover that in table themes in a second. So we've covered squad sizes, indicators, we've covered fire positions, bunkers. Bunkers, just let me, yeah. Yeah, also, just one little dynamic I do like, yeah, if you've got men in a building that are in the same squad, that they are allowed to split their fire to different targets, yeah, if they're shooting out of a different building facing. Yeah, so that's quite a nice mechanic, and you may want to factor that into your thinking, yeah, if you're doing a large building. Large buildings, that was it, yeah. Obviously all these rules factor in for single buildings, yeah, but you may get a large building. There's the the ceiling, is it, it's not a bridge too far, is it? Which one's Arnhem? Oh, is it a bridge too far? Or, yeah, bridge too far, yeah, where they're literally blowing through the terraced houses are moving through them by going through the walls. Large buildings, factories, rows of terraced houses, industrial complexes, military bunkers are handled by sectioning the building off into 6x6 to 8x8 sections. Now you could have little rooms within that section, but each section is its own, and that's important because, you know, you could move between one section and an adjacent section per turn and move your way through, fighting your way through, so to speak. Obviously you've got to sort into the section. Best way to handle this is to either theme your rooms, or yeah, if it's a large structure, what you can do is you can use the idea of large thick interior supporting walls, yeah, with thin interior walls for the smaller rooms. So what you get is when you look down at it and you're moving through the building, yeah, you've got thicker walls defining the sections, and then little thinner walls, perhaps, you know, perhaps make the thicker walls out of something like 5mm foam or foam board, and then get something like 3mm foam board or EPVC, yeah, to make the interior walls, you know, perhaps a couple of rooms within those sections. Yeah, and then you can clearly see looking down where the game sections are, but you've still got the dynamics and all the interesting bits of, you know, the little toilet block and, you know, the office and, you know, all those sort of little, the nuances which make it so beautiful. I love terrain. I'll leave it at that. Eh? Yeah, so that's all the, what you call it, sort of key terrain types. Now, we've talked about close combat when it comes to obstacles, and the idea that you don't want to force models more than 1 inch apart, and you know they need space to be able to sort of fit together. Okay, and also, oh yeah, bunkers. Bunkers are handled rule-wise exactly the same as buildings, you know, with regards to how many models moving in around them, entry, exit via a door, etc. Yeah, the only difference is sort of they provide more protection and take more to take out, you know, when you're shooting at them. But building them wise, yeah, there's no more special considerations beyond normal buildings, guys. Yeah. So keep building close combat. So that's it. Yeah, terrain wise, they're the key things. Yeah, you're talking about placement, you're talking about line of sight, you're talking about what sort of cover types you want, defining the cover types, using indicators, using thickenings. Yeah, you're talking about close combat and making sure that you've got that space to get the models together to actually be able to fight. Yeah, and you're talking about interacting with, you know, your buildings, your obstacles, and the type of ground that affects your movement. Now, variation is great in bolt action. Yeah, this idea of, you know, big bushes by walls, because what it allows you to do is, if you have a row of just exactly the same walls and an objective, a squad will go straight towards the objective and, you know, just end up at the wall where, as a crow flies. If you've got a bush off to the side, which provides a bit more cover as part of the wall structure, then what you've got is a tactical choice. You either go straight for what you look for the objective, meaning you're closer to it and perhaps, you know, you can make a charge to it or reach it next turn, or you may have to make the tactical choice that I'm going to make a slight deviation, be a few more inches away from my objective, but in better cover. Yeah, so this is this variation. Yeah, so when you're planning your terrain, don't just do, you know, lots and lots of straight walls or lots and lots of hedges. Get variation in there, get trees, get lots of scatter pieces that can take 2-man support squads. Yeah, either as a 40mm base or as 3 bases. But make your little scatter pieces. You know, cork coasters, cut the edges down, build some rocks, some bushes, you're good to go. But get terrain you can interact with. But this is more game table themes. So, table themes, guys. Come on. Okay, theming your terrain. Yeah, bolt action is very cinematic and it is a real world sort of scenario, sort of setting. Yeah, it's World War II. You can theme your table anywhere around, you know, Europe, Northern Europe, Eastern Front. You've got over down to the Mediterranean, you've got Africa, you've got into the Far East, and theoretically with Konflikt47 and what if scenarios, you've got pretty much anywhere on the planet. Yeah, because there wasn't much going on other than perhaps South America, and you know, you guys may chip in and say, actually, did you know this was going on in South America? No, I didn't. Yeah, but you've pretty much got the whole world to play with. Yeah, a lot of people start off with Europe, okay, and there are expansions. Yeah, and we may look at various theme and campaign books in the future once we've looked at a few more sets. But for the mainstay, you know, anywhere there was conflict or in World War II, or could have been conflict in World War II, you can set your table there. As you know, obviously, if you're building your table to go with your army, yeah, works if you match them up, guys. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, you're completely free to do a British Expeditionary Force, yeah, and a load of Soviet terrain, but it might look a little silly. Yeah, but fill your boots if you want to go that way. But my advice is to theme it. So if you're doing like forces that were active in, in the late war, working through Northern Europe, then go with those themes. Go match your terrain with those themes. Ideas for what sort of setups to go for. Obviously, you've got loads of books, we've got loads of information on actual engagements, you've got loads of movies, and one of my personal favourites, and it's only really available for, sort of modern conflicts and World War II, is aerial reconnaissance photos, yeah, because there's an absolute stack of them on Google, and you can jump on, scroll through, and eventually you will see a table you want to build. Yeah, and it will have all the elements you want in it. Okay, now obviously if you're going for European stuff, then obstacles count, cover counts, yeah, so woods, hedges, walls, scrub ground, swamps, buildings, roads, yeah, but more importantly than roads, cover. Yeah, cover really counts. Ball action is a game of not killing people outright, but forcing people to keep their heads down behind cover. Yeah, very much like real conflict. It works really well because it works on one of the major of those 4 key factors is the morale system, and the more pressure you put on units from different units, yeah, the more they get pinned, okay, and the less effective they get at shooting and being able to take affirmative action, passing orders. And so cover really counts, and having lots of cover on your table works really well. Lots of line of sight blocking cover doesn't work so well, I find. Yeah, because you can't keep compression down, yeah, unless you're doing the sort of ambush stuff, which is an Overwatch. Basically, it's an interrupt where you're an order way. You put a unit on standby and you allow them to shoot as they move between gaps and gaps. But I would go with lots of cover you can see over first, okay, and then look at adding in line of sight blocking cover, yeah, to sort of pad it out until you get to a feel where you're happy that you've got enough of each. Yeah. Roads are important, as I said. Area terrain is important. When you start with your trees, we talked about a few different indicators. Start off with a couple of small tree scatter bases, yeah, that you can use as individual pieces around the board, yeah, for visual effects. And then also, your small little scatter clumps that you can use to sort of define an edge. Yeah, and then you can build up to larger pieces, adding in your sort of hills for your elevation. Typically, you don't really want hills until you get to your support pieces. Yeah, so they tend to be later down your army build if you're building the terrain alongside building up an army. You're doing lots of movies, yeah, key pieces. Yeah, so that's mainly it, guys. To be perfectly honest, if I'm honest, for table themes, you can theme it anywhere around the world. Yeah. It fits anywhere between sort of World War I up to late, sort of early 70s, moving into modern conflict. Do you know what I mean? Cold War era, which is what I consider modern conflict, although modern conflict is probably insurgency based now. It was modern conflict when I served anyway. Yeah, the big bad wolf was, the big bad bear was the enemy. Yeah, but you see what I mean? It fits into that area timeline-wise, and you've got the whole world for you. Yeah, seriously, guys, though, check out reconnaissance photos. Yeah, so that's it for table themes. Yeah, it's time to wrap it up. So, guys, I hope you've liked this video. For all you really, you terrain guys and you model makers, I know it's not normally what we do on this. Please don't think this is turning over into a full gaming channel, but I am a war gamer. Yeah, bot action is my passion and gaming is my passion, and making terrain that works for games is my passion. That's a big thing for me. Yeah, making terrain that works with a game system. Yeah, now, just to chip in, you can make terrain that works with a game system. It doesn't mean that terrain doesn't work with other game systems. Yeah, it just means that that terrain works particularly well with that game system. Yeah, so don't be discouraged from doing this sort of thing if you play a few different games. You know what I mean? And there's no reason why, if you're a bit of a smart arse, you can't sort of, you know, take a look at the other rules, or get your vote in below, yeah? Find out what you need for the terrain for both systems and see if you can comprise it out. Remember the indicators, placement, line of sight, and check the rules, that sort of stuff. Yeah, obviously, like I say, we will be doing more of these. We may see one in another month or so, yeah, but I need to know what to do next, guys, and this is down to you. Yeah, you have 1 week from this video going live to get your votes in. All you need to do is jump into the comments, yeah, put which game system you want me to look at, yeah, and I will do my level best to grab hold of a copy of the rules and, you know, go down into them, speak to people, figure out and come up with, you know, another one of these videos helping you to make the best terrain, yeah, for your table, visually looking, which is what I do with all the tutorials and that sort of stuff, but also from gameplay wise as well, so you really can have some cracking games. Yeah, it's a big thing for me. Yeah, so that, guys, that wraps it up. Anyway, as I say, I am not a master at the rules, so if I've got anything wrong with bolt action, if you've got any other experiences or anything like that that you think could be key in this, get it in the comments, guys. Yeah, any questions in the comments, yeah. And as always, like it, yeah. Consider sharing this, you know, with various people. And when I say sharing, yeah, if you're after a particular game system being covered, might be worth, you know, sharing it with a mate or two and saying, you know, go on, chip in, put a comment on here. I'm easy. I can't tell anyway, can I? You know, at the end of the day. Yeah, and as always, guys, if you really do like these videos, yeah, consider that Patreon thing. I only ask $1, yeah, but all of this stuff, all the video editing, all the studios and, you know, all the experimentation time and the note making and the studying, yeah, it just helps with that. Yeah, and I really couldn't do it without your support. Genuinely, guys, you're helping, you know, you're helping a dad live his dream. Yeah, his dream job. I'm not quite there. I only get, you know, pretty much about a day a week to do the terrain tutor stuff, dedicated. Yeah, but you are helping, so please consider it. I jump back, I'm in the way of the thing now. Please consider it, guys, yeah. Anyway, guys, I am back with more tutorials and we have lots of stuff to come, but if I don't see you before, I will see you in the next video. All the best, yeah? Ta-ra.